The three Zenthari destroyers spotted the USS Liberty immediately. Captain Jake Morrison watched on his screen as the enemy ships changed course to intercept them. The Zenthari were probably confused about why such an old human ship was in their territory. Enemy ships are powering up their weapons, Amy Rodriguez reported from her science station. They're moving into attack formation. Jake gripped the arms of his captain's chair. This was the moment that would decide everything. Either Pete Collins' quantum resonance weapon would work, or they would all die in the next few minutes. Ryan, target the lead destroyer, Jake ordered. Pete, is your weapon ready? Quantum resonance array is charging, Pete replied from his engineering station. Power levels rising. We'll be ready to fire in 30 seconds. The Zenthari ships came closer. Jake could see them clearly now on the main screen. They were sleek and deadly, with dark hulls and glowing blue engines. Each one was twice the size of the Liberty and carried weapons that could destroy an entire city. Incoming transmission from the lead Zenthari ship, Lisa Harper announced. Put it through, Jake said. A cold, alien voice spoke in perfect English. Human vessel, you have entered Zenthari space without permission. Surrender immediately, or be destroyed. Jake picked up the communication device. This is Captain Morrison of the USS Liberty. We don't surrender to anyone. There was a pause. Then the Zenthari commander spoke again, and Jake could hear amusement in his voice. The Liberty? We have heard of this ship. An old relic from the early days of human space travel. You are far from home, Captain. Your ship should be in a museum, not a battlefield. Maybe, Jake said. But this old museum piece is about to surprise you. The transmission ended. The Zenthari ships spread out and began their attack run. Energy beams lanced out from their weapons, striking the Liberty's shields. The old deflector systems held, but Jake could feel the ship shaking under the impact. Shields down to 80%, Ryan reported. We can't take much more of this. Quantum resonance array fully charged, Pete announced. Ready to fire on your command. Jake watched the tactical display. The lead Zenthari destroyer was coming. Straight at them, its shields glowing bright blue around its hull. Those shields had never been penetrated by human weapons. Every ship that had tried to fight the Zenthari had failed because of those shields. Lock onto target, Jake ordered. Target locked, Ryan confirmed. Jake took a deep breath. Everything depended on this moment. Fire! The Liberty's weapons fired at the same time as Pete's quantum resonance array. A brilliant beam of energy shot out from the old ship, hitting the Zenthari destroyer's shields. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then the impossible occurred. The Zenthari shields flickered and vanished completely. Direct hit! Ryan shouted. Their shields are down! The Liberty's conventional weapons struck the unprotected Zenthari hull. Explosions rippled across the enemy ship as the human weapons tore through armor that had never been breached before. The Zenthari destroyer began spinning out of control, trailing fire and debris. The bridge of the Liberty erupted in cheers. Pete's weapon had worked perfectly. They had done something that no human ship had ever accomplished before. They had defeated Zenthari's shields, but the battle was far from over. The other two Zenthari ships were still attacking, and they were very angry. Enemy ships are changing tactics, Amy reported. They're moving faster and firing everything they have at us. Energy beams from the remaining destroyers hammered the Liberty's shields. The old ship shook violently as her deflector systems struggled to hold up. Shields down to 40%, Ryan said. We need to finish this quickly. Jake pointed at the second destroyer. Target that one. Pete, can you fire again? Recharging now, Pete replied. 15 seconds. The Liberty turned toward the second Zenthari ship. More enemy fire struck their shields, and sparks flew from control panels around the bridge. The old ship was taking a beating, but she was still fighting. Quantum resonance array ready, Pete announced. Fire, Jake ordered. Again, the brilliant beam shot out from the Liberty. The second Zenthari destroyer's shields collapsed instantly. Ryan's weapons found their mark, and another enemy ship exploded in a ball of fire. The last Zenthari destroyer tried to retreat, but it was too late. Pete had already begun charging his weapon for a third shot. The enemy commander must have realized that his shields were useless against this strange human weapon. "The last ship is trying to run," Lisa reported. "Don't let it escape," Jake said. "If it gets away, it will report what happened here. The Zenthari will know we have a new weapon." The Liberty chased after the fleeing destroyer. Pete's quantum resonance array fired one more time, and the last enemy ship died in space like its companions. When the battle was over, the bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at their screens, hardly believing what had just happened. The USS Liberty, an old, forgotten warship that everyone thought was useless, had just destroyed 3 Zenthari destroyers in single combat. "All enemy ships destroyed," Amy reported quietly. "No survivors detected." Jake stood up from his captain's chair and walked over to Pete's station. The chief engineer was slumped in his chair, exhausted but smiling. "Pete," Jake said, "you just changed the war." Word of the Liberty's victory spread through human space faster than anyone thought possible. Fleet Command at first refused to believe the reports. An old patrol ship defeating 3 Zenthari destroyers? It seemed impossible. But when they saw the battle recordings and studied Pete's weapon design, everything changed. Orders came from the highest levels of human government. Every available ship was to be retrofitted with quantum resonance arrays immediately. Admiral Patricia Stone herself came aboard the Liberty to congratulate the crew. She stood on the bridge where Jake had made his desperate decision to fight. "Captain Morrison," she said, "your ship and crew have given humanity something we lost years ago. Hope." Jake looked around his bridge at the crew who had risked everything. "We just proved that sometimes the oldest weapons are the best ones. Admiral, within 6 months the war turned completely around. Human fleets equipped with quantum resonance weapons struck deep into Zenthari territory. The enemy's technological advantage disappeared overnight when their shields became useless. The Zenthari Empire, which had seemed unstoppable for 20 years, began to fall apart. World after world was liberated as human forces advanced. The Zenthari retreated to their home systems, no longer the galactic threat they had once been. Jake Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of a new fleet. But he would always remember his time aboard the Liberty, the forgotten warship that everyone ignored until it brought down an empire. The old ship was retired with full honors and turned into a museum. Visitors from across human space came to see the vessel that had changed history. Children would stand on her bridge and hear the story of how an aging warship and her brave crew proved that being forgotten didn't mean being useless. The war was over, and humanity was free once again. 6 months after the Liberty's victory, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the USS Constitution. It was the most advanced warship humanity had ever built, equipped with quantum resonance arrays and the latest technology. But Jake often found himself missing his old ship. The war against the Zenthari Empire was almost over. Human fleets had liberated dozens of worlds and pushed the enemy back to their home systems. The galaxy looked completely different now than it had a year ago. "Admiral," said Commander Kelly Davis, his new second-in-command, "we're receiving reports from the front lines. The Zenthari have surrendered 3 more star systems. They're retreating faster than we can advance." Jake nodded as he studied the tactical displays. Red areas that had once shown Zenthari territory were turning blue as human forces reclaimed world after world. The quantum resonance weapons had made all the difference. Zenthari shields were now completely useless, and their technological advantage had disappeared overnight. "Any word from the peace negotiations?" Jake asked. "The Zenthari Council is asking for a meeting," Kelly replied. "They want to discuss surrender terms." Jake felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. The war that had seemed hopeless was finally ending, but it had cost so much. Millions of people had died over the past 20 years. Entire worlds had been destroyed. Even victory couldn't bring back all the lives that had been lost. His personal communicator beeped, and Jake saw a familiar name on the screen. Pete Collins was calling from Earth, where he was now working as head of weapons development for the entire human fleet. "Hello, Pete," Jake said when he answered the call. Pete's face appeared on the small screen, looking older but happier than Jake had seen him in years. "Jake, I just wanted to give you the latest numbers. We now have 800 ships equipped with quantum resonance arrays. The Zenthari can't match that kind of firepower." 800, Jake repeated. "Hard to believe it all started with your crazy experiment on the Liberty," Pete laughed. "Crazy is right. I still can't believe we survived that first test firing. The power readings were off the charts. We could have blown ourselves up." Jake thought about that day 6 months ago when they had faced 3 Zenthari destroyers with an untested weapon. It seemed like a lifetime ago, but it had only been the beginning of humanity's comeback. "Pete, I have some news," Jake said. "The government is planning something special for the Liberty. They want to turn her into a memorial and museum. She'll be permanently docked at Earth Station 1 where everyone can visit her." Pete's expression grew serious. "She deserves that honor. That old ship saved the human race." After the call ended, Jake walked to his ready room and pulled up the files about the Liberty's final mission. The old ship was currently on her way back to Earth, carrying the rescued scientists from Research Station Delta 7 and a full report of everything that had happened. Dr. Carlos Martinez had become something of a hero himself. His research into Zenthari shield technology had provided the final piece of the puzzle that made Pete's weapon possible. The scientific community was calling it the most important discovery of the war, but Jake knew the real heroes were the crew, members who had risked everything on a forgotten ship in the Outer Rim. People like Lisa Harper, who had led the dangerous rescue mission, Ryan Blake, who had fired the weapons that brought down the first Zenthari ships to fall to human forces, Amy Rodriguez, who had detected the distress signal that started everything, and, of course, Pete Collins, whose brilliant engineering had turned an old patrol ship into the weapon that ended the war. Jake's thoughts were interrupted by an urgent message from Fleet Command. The Zenthari Empire had officially requested a ceasefire. They wanted to begin formal peace negotiations immediately. The message was brief, but historic. After 20 years of war, the Zenthari were ready to surrender. Their empire was collapsing as more and more worlds joined the human alliance. The quantum resonance weapons had not only defeated their military forces, but had also inspired dozens of other alien species to rebel against Zenthari rule. Jake called an immediate meeting with his senior staff. When they gathered in the conference room, he shared the news about the ceasefire request. "This is it," he told them. "The war is effectively over. The Zenthari know they can't win anymore." Commander Davis looked at the latest intelligence reports. "Our scouts are reporting that Zenthari fleets are withdrawing from their outer territories. They're consolidating around their home worlds." "What are the terms they're offering?" asked the ship's tactical officer. Jake pulled up the diplomatic files. "Complete withdrawal from all conquered territories, reparations for damaged worlds, and most importantly, they're offering to share their advanced technology with the species they conquered." It was more than anyone had hoped for. The Zenthari were not just surrendering, they were trying to make up for decades of destruction and conquest. 3 weeks later, Jake stood in the observation deck of Earth Station 1, watching as the USS Liberty approached for the final time. The old ship looked small compared to the massive space station, but she was receiving the honor guard usually reserved for the most important vessels in the fleet. Ships from dozens of worlds had come to witness the Liberty's arrival. News reporters from across human space were broadcasting the event live. The warship that everyone had ignored was now the most famous ship in the galaxy. As the Liberty docked, Jake saw Pete Collins walking through the airlock. Behind him came Lisa Harper, Ryan Blake, Amy Rodriguez, and the rest of the crew that had changed history. They all looked tired but proud. Pete walked up to Jake and saluted. "The USS Liberty reporting for final duty, Admiral." Jake returned the salute, then shook Pete's hand. "The Liberty's duty is complete, old friend. She's earned her rest." The formal ceremony took place in the station's main assembly hall. Representatives from dozens of worlds attended, along with the rescued scientists from Delta 7 and the highest officials in human government. When Jake was asked to speak, he kept his words simple. The Liberty proved that it's not the size of your ship or the power of your weapons that matters most. It's the courage of your crew and the willingness to try something new when everyone else says it's impossible. The USS Liberty was officially decommissioned and converted into a museum that same day. Visitors would be able to walk through her corridors, see Pete's quantum resonance array, and learn about the crew that had saved the galaxy. But for Jake, the most important moment came when he stood alone on the Liberty's bridge one last time. The old ship was quiet now, her mission complete. She had been forgotten and ignored for years, then became the most important vessel in human space. As Jake turned off the bridge lights and sealed the door, he smiled. Sometimes the best weapons were the ones nobody expected. Jake Morrison sat in the huge meeting room of the Council station. The room was bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. Tall walls made of some strange metal reached up so high that he could barely see the ceiling. Around him sat creatures from dozens of different worlds. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of crystal that sparkled in the light. A few looked almost human, but had blue skin or extra arms. They were all talking about humans. Jake tried not to smile as he listened to their words. "The humans are weak," said Vextar. He was from a race that looked like giant ants walking on two legs. His voice made a clicking sound when he talked. "They run away from every fight. When pirates attacked their space stations, the humans just left. They took their people and ran like scared children." The other aliens nodded their heads. They all seemed to agree with Vextar. Zephyros was the leader of the council. He was tall and made of blue crystal that glowed softly. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes. "Yes, this is a big problem. The humans say they want to join our council. But how can we let them join when they will not fight? What, good are friends who run away when trouble comes?" Jake kept his face calm. Next to him sat Lisa Brooks. She wore the blue uniform of Earth's Space Navy. To the aliens, she looked like just another peaceful human. They did not know that Lisa had fought in 12 battles across 3 star systems. They did not know that she had once held off an entire pirate fleet with just her small ship until help could arrive. "We have always believed in peace," Jake said in a quiet voice. "On Earth, we learned long ago that fighting only brings more fighting. We think there are better ways to solve problems than with guns and bombs." Sekatar was a big lizard creature with green scales and yellow eyes. He made a hissing sound that Jake knew meant he was laughing. "This is exactly why you humans can never be real members of our council. You are too soft, too weak. In space, only the strong survive. The weak get eaten." More aliens nodded. A creature that looked like a walking tree said, "My people have watched yours for many years. When someone threatens you, you always try to talk first. When talking does not work, you run away. This is not the way of warriors." Jake nodded slowly. "We understand your concerns. But we believe that running away is sometimes the smart thing to do. Why lose lives in a fight when you can avoid the fight completely?" This made the aliens even more sure that humans were cowards. They whispered to each other in their strange languages. Jake caught a few words. Most of them were not very nice. What these aliens did not know was that Jake was not really just a simple ambassador. His real job was much more important. He worked for Earth's Secret Service. His mission was to make sure the aliens thought humans were weak and harmless. Lisa was not just a Navy captain either. She was one of Earth's best military minds. While she sat quietly in her chair, she was studying every alien in the room. She was learning about their weapons, their ships, and their ways of fighting. All of this information would go back to Earth's war planners. The truth was that humans were very good at fighting. They had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They had learned every trick, every strategy, every way to win a battle. But Earth's leaders had decided long ago that it was better to let the galaxy think humans were peaceful. "Let me tell you what happened last month," said a new voice. This came from Ambassador Krall, who looked like a giant octopus but walked on land. The Korthak raiders attacked 3 human colonies. They had big ships and powerful weapons. Any other race would have fought back. But what did the humans do? All eyes turned to Jake. He already knew this story, but he pretended to look sad and ashamed. "My people called for help," Krall continued. "They begged the council to send ships to protect them. But before we could even vote on it, the humans had packed up and left. 3 whole colonies, just abandoned. Millions of people running away from a fight. The aliens all made sounds of disgust. Some shook their heads. Others made clicking or hissing noises. The Korthak took everything," Krall added. "The humans left behind factories, farms, and cities. All of it became Korthak property. And for what? Because the humans were too scared to fight?" Jake looked down at his hands. "We saved lives. Our people are alive instead of dead. Is that not more important than keeping some buildings?" This made the aliens even more angry. Zephyros's crystal body glowed brighter, which Jake knew meant he was upset. "Buildings can be rebuilt," Zephyros said. "But honor once lost can never be found again. How can we trust allies who will not stand and fight beside us?" "When the Void Hunters come," added Vextar, "will the humans run away then too? When our enemies attack our home worlds, will humans help us, or will they pack their bags and leave?" Jake wanted to tell them the truth. He wanted to say that if the Void Hunters or any other enemy ever threatened the galaxy, humans would not just fight them. Humans would hunt them down and destroy them so completely that no trace would remain. Human warships were hidden in secret bases across dozens of star systems. Human soldiers trained every day for battles that the aliens could not even imagine. But that was not his job. His job was to make sure the aliens never learned how dangerous humans really were. At least, not until it was too late for them to do anything about it. "We will always help our friends," Jake said carefully. "But we will help in our own way. Perhaps we can supply food and medicine to your people. Perhaps we can help you find new places to live if your homes are attacked. Is this not also valuable?" The aliens did not think so. They wanted warriors, not nurses. They wanted ships that could fight, not ships that could carry refugees. As the meeting went on, Jake listened to more complaints about human weakness. The aliens talked about how humans always tried to make peace with their enemies. They complained that humans would rather give up their belongings than fight for them. They said that humans were a waste of space in the galaxy. Jake agreed with everything they said. He apologized for his people's weakness. He promised that humans would try to be braver in the future, but he said that fighting was just not in their nature. All the while, he was thinking about the secret reports on his desk back on Earth. Reports about new weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Reports about strategies that could win wars before the enemy even knew they had started. Reports about an army that was ready to fight anyone, anywhere, anytime. The aliens thought they knew. Humans. They had no idea what was coming. 5 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy looked very different now. Jake Morrison stood in his office on Unity Station, the new galactic capital that floated in neutral space between Earth and the former Federation worlds. Through his window, he could see ships from hundreds of different species docking together in peace. "The morning report, sir," said his assistant, a young woman named Lucy Chen. She was one of the new generation of humans who had grown up knowing aliens. As friends instead of enemies, Jake took the reports and smiled. Trade between human and alien worlds had increased by 300% in the past year. New colonies were being built by mixed crews of humans and aliens working together. Children from different species were learning in the same schools, through quantum communication links. But not everything was perfect. Captain Steve Walsh and his followers had established what they called the Pure Human Empire in the Outer Rim. They used the ancient technology to conquer primitive worlds and force alien species to serve them. "Any word from the Rim territories?" Jake asked Lucy. "Bad news, sir," Lucy replied. "Walsh's forces attacked another peaceful world yesterday. The Gentle Ones lost their main city." The Gentle Ones were a species of plant-like beings who had never hurt anyone. They spent their lives growing beautiful gardens and making art. The idea of Steve Walsh's people hurting them made Jake feel sick. Admiral Roy Henderson entered the office with his usual serious expression. Even in peacetime, Roy always looked like he was preparing for war. "Jake, we need to talk about the Walsh problem." "I know," Jake said. "But if we attack him with the ancient weapons, we become exactly what he is." "Then what do you suggest?" Roy asked. "Every month he gets stronger. Every month more innocent people die." Before Jake could answer, Dr. Aaron Blake burst into the office. His face was excited and worried at the same time. "Jake, you need to see this. We have been receiving new signals from deep space." Aaron activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy and the space beyond it. Red dots marked the sources of mysterious signals coming from the void between galaxies. "These are not from the Keepers," Aaron explained. "These signals are coming from much farther away, and they are getting closer." Kate Phillips joined them in the office. She had been working on translating the new signals for weeks. "I finally broke their code," she announced. "The message is simple but terrifying. It says, 'The harvest time approaches. The young species have grown enough. We come to collect.'" Jake felt his blood turn cold. "Collect? What does that mean?" Aaron pulled up more data on his display. "The signals are coming from a fleet of ships bigger than anything we have ever seen. Each ship is the size of a small moon. There are thousands of them, and they are heading toward our galaxy." "How long do we have?" Roy asked. "Based on their speed, maybe 2 years before they arrive," Aaron replied. Jake realized that this was why the Keepers had been testing humanity. They knew that something even more dangerous was coming. The galaxy needed protectors who could use great power without being corrupted by it. "We need to call an emergency meeting of all species," Jake decided. "Every world needs to know what is coming." The next day, representatives from over 1,000 different species gathered in Unity Station's Great Hall. The hall was huge, with floating platforms that could adjust to the needs of any type of alien. Some species breathed air, others needed water, and a few lived in pure energy fields. High Counselor Vextar was there, representing what remained of the old Federation government. The Corvan Empire sent their new leaders, who were much more peaceful than their predecessors. Even some of the smaller species that had never been involved in galactic politics came to listen. Jake stood before them all and shared the terrible news. "A new threat is coming to our galaxy. Ships from outside our space are heading toward us. We estimate they will arrive in less than 2 years." The reaction was immediate chaos. Some species wanted to run and hide on distant worlds. Others suggested trying to negotiate with the newcomers. A few warlike species thought they should attack the fleet before it arrived. "Order! Order!" Vextar called out. But nobody was listening to him anymore. Jake activated the quantum communication system that connected him to every human in the galaxy. "All human ships, this is Jake Morrison. We have a Code 1 emergency. Return to your home systems immediately and prepare for the defense of the galaxy." But Jake was not just calling human ships. Through the new communication networks that Kate had built, his message reached every species. For the first time in galactic history, Someone was asking all the different races to work together as equals. Aaron had been studying the ancient archives more deeply. He found records of the beings who were coming. "Jake, I found something." The ancestors called them the Harvesters. They travel from galaxy to galaxy, taking the most advanced species as slaves and destroying the rest. "How did the ancients deal with them?" Jake asked. "They didn't," Aaron said grimly. "The Harvesters came 25,000 years ago. That is the real reason the ancient human empire fell. They were weakened by civil war when the Harvesters arrived. Most humans were taken as slaves, and the rest scattered to primitive worlds to hide." Jake understood now why the Keepers had waited so long to reveal themselves. They had been preparing for the Harvesters' return. Humanity was not just being tested for their own sake, but for the sake of the entire galaxy. Meanwhile, Steve Walsh received news of the approaching threat in his fortress on a conquered world. His response was exactly what Jake had feared. "This changes nothing," Walsh told his followers. "When these Harvesters arrive, they will find that humanity rules this galaxy. We will negotiate from a position of strength." But Walsh's lieutenant, a man named Carl Brooks, was not so sure. "Sir, the ancient records say the Harvesters are more powerful than anything that has ever existed. Maybe we should work with Morrison and the others." Walsh's face turned angry. "Morrison is weak. He gave away our rightful place as rulers. When the time comes, we will show these Harvesters what real humans can do." Back on Unity Station, Jake was working with alien scientists to understand the Harvester technology. The enemy ships used something beyond quantum mechanics. They could manipulate matter at the atomic level and create energy from nothing. "Our ancient weapons might not be enough," Aaron warned. "We need something new. Something that has never been tried before." Kate had an idea that surprised everyone. "What if we don't fight them with weapons at all? What if we show them something they have never seen before?" "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Every species they have conquered in the past was divided against itself," Kate explained. "Humans fighting humans, aliens fighting aliens. But what if they arrive to find something different? What if they find a galaxy where every species works together?" It was a crazy idea, but it might be their only hope. Jake began planning for the greatest cooperation effort in galactic history. Every species would contribute their unique abilities to a common defense. The gentle ones would grow special plants that could survive in space. The Corvan Empire would provide their engineering skills. The Zephyrians would use their flying abilities for reconnaissance. Even the smallest species would have important roles to play. As news of the plan spread across the galaxy, something remarkable happened. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years began working together. Old hatreds were set aside in the face of a threat that could destroy them all. But time was running out. The Harvester fleet was getting closer every day, and Jake knew that the next 2 years would determine whether the galaxy survived or became another collection of empty worlds in the cosmic graveyard. Within hours of Lisa's demonstration, word spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. Ships from hundreds of star systems began arriving at Council Station Omega. Every species wanted to hear the human who could speak the old tongue. Lisa found herself in a position she had never imagined. The same aliens who had called her primitive the day before now approached her with deep respect. They asked politely if she would speak their ancestors' words again. Some even begged her to teach them the ancient pronunciation. "Dr. Carter," said Elder Corthane, a being who looked like a giant butterfly made of light. "My people have legends of the first speakers. We thought they were just myths. But when you spoke yesterday, every cell in my body recognized the truth." Lisa sat in what had once been a simple meeting room, but was now packed with alien linguists from across the galaxy. Her small translation device had been replaced with advanced equipment that could record and analyze every sound she made. "The old tongue is not just one language," she explained to the assembled group. "It's actually a family of related languages that share common roots. Different species preserved different aspects when your ancestors visited their worlds. An alien that looked like a walking crystal tree raised a branch-like arm. You mean other worlds also have fragments of the ancient speech? Yes, Lisa nodded. I've already identified connections to languages on 17 different planets. Earth just happened to preserve the most complete forms because humans have always been fascinated by our own history. Captain Morrison watched from the back of the room as his language expert became the center of galactic attention. The same aliens who had dismissed humanity as worthless now hung on every word she spoke. Commander Brooks was busy handling the political side of their sudden change in status. The Galactic Council had called an emergency session to reconsider humanity's application for membership. But it was no longer just about joining the Council. The aliens wanted Earth to become something much more important. The proposal is extraordinary, Helen told Jake as they walked through the station's corridors. They want to designate Earth as the galactic center for ancient knowledge. They're offering to build research facilities, libraries, and universities on our planet. Jake shook his head in amazement. 2 days ago, they thought we were too primitive to deserve attention. Now they want to turn Earth into the galaxy's most important academic center. Ben had been filming everything, creating what would become the most important documentary in human history. His camera captured the moment when proud alien species humbled themselves before a human linguist, asking her to teach them their own forgotten heritage. "This is incredible," he said as he reviewed his footage. "We came here as students and ended up becoming the teachers. Lisa has turned the entire galactic power structure upside down." But the most dramatic moment came when the Council of Elders arrived. These were the oldest beings in the galaxy, some of whom had lived for millions of years. They represented species so ancient that they were considered myths by younger civilizations. Elder Nixvar was a being of pure thought who normally communicated only through quantum field manipulation. But when Lisa spoke the old tongue, the ancient entity manifested a physical form for the first time in eons. "Young speaker of old words," Nixvar said in a voice like distant thunder, "you have awakened memories I thought were lost forever. The language you speak carries the essence of the first wanderers, those who seeded wisdom across the void." Lisa felt overwhelmed by the responsibility that was being placed on her shoulders. "Elder Nixvar, I'm just a linguist. I study languages. I never expected to become the keeper of galactic heritage." The ancient being moved closer, its form shifting like smoke and starlight. "But that is exactly what you are, child of Earth. You and your species have accomplished something we thought impossible. You have kept our ancestors' voices alive while we let them fade into silence." Another elder, a creature that resembled a living mountain, spoke in a voice that shook the station. "For millions of years, we have advanced our technology and expanded our knowledge. But in our rush toward the future, we abandoned our past. We deleted our linguistic heritage as primitive and unnecessary. We thought we were becoming more sophisticated," added a third elder who appeared to be made of liquid metal. "We simplified our languages, standardized our communication, eliminated what we saw as inefficient complexity. We never realized we were throwing away our souls." Lisa looked around at the assembled elders, beings whose wisdom spanned galactic ages. "Your ancestors' language isn't gone forever. With what I've learned from Earth's preserved forms, I can help you reconstruct not just the words, but the thoughts and concepts that shaped your earliest civilizations." The voting session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Species after species stood to speak about humanity's unexpected gift to the galaxy. The same beings who had planned to reject Earth's membership now competed to offer the most generous terms for alliance. "Humanity has shown us that advancement isn't just about moving forward," declared Ambassador Trillac. "Sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from looking back. They have preserved what we foolishly discarded." The Korath representative, who had mocked humans as primitive animals, now spoke with deep humility. We measure advancement by technology and conquest, but the humans measure it by memory and preservation. They have kept alive the voices that we silenced. The Veltar Collective, which had called humans intellectually inferior, now pulsed with colors that translated to profound respect. Translation. We thought intelligence meant forgetting the past to embrace the future. Now we understand that true wisdom means carrying the past forward as a gift to tomorrow. When the vote was called, it was unanimous. Not only was Earth granted immediate membership in the Galactic Council, but humanity was also given a position that had never existed before. They were named the Galactic Conservators of Ancient Wisdom, with authority to preserve and protect the linguistic heritage of all member species. Lisa was appointed as the first director of Galactic Linguistic Heritage. Her job would be to train teams of researchers from across the galaxy in the reconstruction and preservation of ancient languages. Earth would become a pilgrimage site where species could rediscover their own forgotten roots. Dr. Carter said, Elder Nixvar, as the ceremonies concluded, "You have given us a gift beyond measure. You have returned our ancestors to us." Lisa smiled, thinking of how the day had begun with such different expectations. We humans have a saying, sometimes the student becomes the teacher, but in this case, I think we were always meant to be both. As the New Horizon prepared to return to Earth with news of humanity's acceptance into the galactic community, the crew reflected on their extraordinary journey. They had come to space as representatives of a young species seeking acceptance. They were returning as the guardians of the galaxy's most precious treasure. Jake stood on the bridge, watching alien ships from across the galaxy following them toward Earth. Lisa, do you think our planet is ready for this? Lisa looked out at the convoy of vessels carrying scholars, researchers, and pilgrims from 1,000 worlds. I think Earth has been ready for this moment since the first human decided to preserve an ancient story instead of forgetting it. We've always been the species that remembers. Ben finished uploading his final report to Earth's communication networks. When people back home see this footage, they're going to realize that being human means something completely different than we thought. Helen nodded as she watched the approaching blue planet grow larger on the view screen. We thought we were the youngest and most primitive species in the galaxy. Instead, we turned out to be the keepers of everyone else's oldest memories. The mocking had stopped forever. In its place was something much more valuable: recognition that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their ambition, but their love of memory and their gift for keeping old wisdom alive. The species that had been dismissed as worthless children had become the honored elders of galactic civilization. Earth was no longer humanity's prison. It had become the galaxy's most sacred library, where the voices of ancient ancestors would never again be forgotten. The Council's military was losing badly. Every day brought news of more destroyed ships and lost battles. The alien fleets that had seemed so powerful were being cut apart like paper by the enemy weapons. General Mordock stood in the Council's war room, staring at a map covered in red marks. Each red mark was a place where Council forces had been destroyed. There were dozens of them now, spreading across the galaxy like a disease. "We have lost the entire Fourth Fleet," reported one of his officers. 60 ships destroyed in less than 10 minutes. No survivors. Mordock's metal armor made clanking sounds as he moved. How is this possible? Our ships have the best weapons in the galaxy. Their hull armor absorbs our energy blasts, sir. Our missiles explode before they can reach their targets. It is like they have some kind of invisible shield that we cannot see. In another part of the galaxy, the enemy fleet continued its advance. The alien ships were sleek and black, moving through space like hunting sharks. They showed no mercy and took no prisoners. Every Council station, every planet, every ship they found was completely destroyed. The aliens had started calling them the Devourers because they seemed to eat everything in their path. Where the Devourers passed, nothing remained, not even debris. On Earth, President Karen Lee sat in a secret meeting room deep underground. The room was protected by layers of metal and rock that could survive a nuclear bomb. Around the table sat the most important people in human government and military. "The Council forces have maybe 2 weeks left," reported General Peter Cole. He was in charge of Earth's special operations. "At the current rate of destruction, the Devourers will reach the Council's homeworlds very soon." President Lee was a small woman with brown hair and tired eyes. She had been making the hardest decisions any human leader had ever faced. "And our forces?" "Ready and waiting, ma'am. Admiral Kane has positioned our fleets exactly where we need them. The enemy has no idea we are there. Casualties among Council forces? Over 2 million dead, ma'am. Entire worlds are being evacuated. The Devourers do not seem interested in capturing anything. They just destroy." President Lee closed her eyes for a moment. She had hoped it would never come to this. Humanity had worked so hard to appear weak and peaceful, but now there was no choice. "Give Admiral Kane permission to begin the operation. It is time to show the galaxy who we really are." Back on the Council station, things were falling apart. Half of the alien representatives had already gone home to defend their own worlds. The ones who remained were arguing constantly about what to do next. Jake Morrison sat in his usual seat watching the chaos around him. Aliens were shouting at each other in a dozen different languages. Some were crying, others were making angry threats. Zephyros tried to maintain order, but his crystal body was flickering weakly. "We must work together," he said. "If we cannot stop the Devourers, all of our worlds will be destroyed." "Work together with what?" demanded Skatar. "Half our fleets are already gone. The other half are too scared to fight." Vextar clicked his mandibles angrily. "Where are the humans? They promised to help us. But all they have sent are medical supplies and empty cargo ships." All eyes turned to Jake. He could feel their anger and desperation. These aliens had spent months telling him that humans were too weak to be useful. Now they were demanding that humans save them. Jake stood up slowly. There was something different about him now. The mild expression was gone from his face. His eyes were hard and cold. When he spoke, his voice carried an authority that none of the aliens had heard before. "The assistance you requested is already in position," he said quietly. The aliens stared at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" asked Zephyros. Instead of answering, Jake pressed a button on his wrist device. Immediately, the main display screen in the meeting room lit up with new information. Dozens of ship signatures appeared throughout the sector. These were not the small transport ships the aliens expected. These were massive warships, bigger than anything the Council had ever built. The aliens gasped and made sounds of shock. Some stood up from their seats to get a better look at the screen. "Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings," Jake continued, his voice now carrying the tone of a military commander, "allow me to introduce you to the Human Defense Fleet." The largest signature on the display was enormous. It was 3 times bigger than the Council's biggest dreadnought. A new voice came through the room's speakers, clear and strong. "Council Station. This is Admiral Richard Kane of the Human Space Command. We are moving to engage the enemy fleet. I suggest you prepare for a demonstration of human military doctrine." The aliens could not believe what they were hearing. Some of them started talking at once, demanding explanations. Others just stared at the display in shock. "Impossible," whispered Mordock. "Those ships are huge. How did you build them without us knowing?" Jake smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "General, did you really think we would tell you about all of our capabilities? We may appear peaceful, but we are not stupid." "But you ran away from every fight," protested Vextar. "You abandoned your colonies when the Korthak attacked." "We evacuated our people because their lives were more important than buildings," Jake replied. "But we did not forget what the Korthak did. Would you like to know what happened to them?" Before anyone could answer, Jake pressed another button. New images appeared on the screen. They showed the complete destruction of the Korthak pirate base. Every ship, every station, every hideout had been reduced to cosmic dust. "We do not fight for territory," Jake explained. "We fight to end threats permanently. The Korthak no longer exist as an organized force. They will never threaten anyone again." The room was completely silent now. The aliens were beginning to understand that they had been completely wrong about humans. Lisa Brooks, who had been quiet during the entire meeting, finally spoke. "For 3 months, you have all told us that we are too weak to defend ourselves. You have said that we are cowards who run from every fight. You have treated us like children who need to be protected." She stood up and walked to the display screen. "But the truth is that we have been protecting you. Every human ship you thought was a cargo vessel was actually a warship in disguise. Every human diplomat was actually a military officer gathering intelligence. Every peaceful gesture was part of a strategy you could not understand." Admiral Kane's face appeared on the screen. He was a stern man with gray hair and the bearing of someone who had commanded fleets in real battles. The Devourer fleet consists of approximately 3,000 vessels. They have destroyed everything in their path because no one has been able to mount an effective defense against them. He paused, and when he spoke again, there was something terrifying in his voice. "That changes now. Human doctrine is simple. We do not fight to win battles. We fight to win wars, completely and permanently." The aliens watched in stunned silence as hundreds of human ships began moving across the display. Ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields, disguised as space stations, or concealed behind moons suddenly revealed themselves. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of.